Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I am Leanna Rakovic, the CEO of the Australian Banana Growers Council. Today, I'm joined by our Stakeholder Engagement and Advocacy Manager, Catherine Dryden, who will be coordinating regular webinars on key industry issues over the next 12 months. So for today, our presentation is on crop protection chemicals, and it will be delivered by ABGC's R&D Manager, Dr. Rosie Godwin, who will give us an update on the Chlorpyrifos review. So we'll start with Rosie giving us a 10-minute presentation, and then I'll ask everyone to hold questions over until the end. So we'll take questions through the chat function at the top of your screen, or you can use the raise the hand icon that also sits in that top bar for you. So I'll hand over now to Rosie, who will start screen sharing in just a few minutes. Thank you.
Thanks, Leanne. Many of you know through information distributed by ABGC and DAF that Chlorpyrifos, which is commonly used in the industry to control bunch pests and weevil borer, that it's been under review by the regulator, the Australian Pesticides and Veterinary Medicines Authority, or the APVMA. And today I wanted to give you the latest update. So today's webinar, today I'm going to talk a little bit about the background of the Chlorpyrifos review, and then I'm just going to touch on safety and responsibilities, the reasons for the review and the timelines, the proposed decision for horticulture and next steps, and then what's the industry been doing about this, and then we'll have some Q&A. So just as a bit of background, although I'm sure most of you are familiar with it very well, but just to go over it again. Chlorpyrifos is an insecticide. It's broad spectrum, non-systemic, and an organophosphate. And we know that these have been targeted by many jurisdictions across the world for review. And it's been in widespread use across agriculture, horticulture, and in the commercial sector and in veterinary situations. And in bananas, it's registered for control of flower thrips, rust thrips, banana weevil borer, scab moth, and a few other different sorts of caterpillars. There's a few different sorts of formulations that have been available to us, and you can see them there, various emulsifiable concentrates, wettable granules, wettable powders, and the 700 emulsifiable concentrates and the wettable granules, and even impregnated bags, although I don't believe that they're available. And most of you have been using Strikeout or Lawspan over a long period of time. Now, just to touch on some safety and responsibilities. Chlorpyrifos is a hazardous chemical, and that shouldn't be forgotten. It can cause short and long-term health effects if proper precautions aren't taken. It's the primary responsibility of the business owner to ensure the safety of all their staff. And so that means that you must download and provide safety data sheets to your staff, to do risk assessments, to have the correct PPE and respirators, and staff should be trained and understand the safety data sheets, the risk assessments, the PPE and the respirators. And in some cases, with organophosphates, health monitoring should be conducted depending on what the work rates are. And it should always be used according to the label. Although I'm sure no one online has been using things off-label, I have heard a few rumours over the last 6 months, and I do feel very concerned about it. Off-label uses, backyard manufacturing of Chlorpyrifos dust, and staff left to their own devices, such as you can use that PPE over there if you want to, is just totally unacceptable. It's illegal. Your work cover would be void. Heavy fines could apply. And if someone was taken to the Innisfail or Cairns Hospital with acute poisoning or other sorts of less acute poisoning, the grower or the business operator could be found to be personally liable. I mean, how much is your business really worth? So, although you may be following the label yourself, just you might hear rumours around the district, and we've all got to pull our weight here and get people to understand that these off label uses, if you hear them mentioned in the community, have a chat to your friends or people that might be saying they're going to do these things and just tell them it's just no good, okay? It's unsafe and it brings a bad name and it jeopardises these chemicals for use in our industry. I mean, work health and safety is the reason for the review, as well as residues in food and their effect on the environment. Now, this review has been going on for a long time. It actually was in 1994 when Chlorpyrifos was nominated for reconsideration based on those safety concerns mentioned above. And then there's been assessment reports on the chemistry, toxicology, OH&S, residues, and trade and efficacy published in 2000, 2009, 2017, and 2019 when all domestic uses were cancelled. So we knew that the writing was on the walls. And since 2019 until this year, we knew that they were looking into the review of all remaining uses relating to agriculture, horticulture, the commercial uses, and veterinary uses. And then on Wednesday, the APVMA published their proposed decision for all of these industries. And this was their proposed decision for horticulture. And that was that they proposed to cancel all uses with products containing chlorpyrifos, except in the case of horticulture, impregnated bunch covers, or for potted ornamentals, commercial cultivation only, or for container plants in soil or other growing media for commercial production. This is all based on the contemporary assessment of worker health and safety and environmental risks that has not supported the use of chlorpyrifos in food producing situations, with the exception of banana bags, even though we can't seem to get them or anyone manufactures them. In fact, in all industries, nearly all uses have been proposed for cancellation except for those that are highly contained or slow release. So, in the cattle industry, for example, the only use that's supported is for cattle ear tags or for termite treatment in wool cavities. You can't use chlorpyrifos for treating termites out in the environment, but you can if it's in a wool. So that's the sort of thing that we're dealing with here. And it's what we've been expecting. And unfortunately, it's in line with what's been happening in internationally. For instance, in the USA, all uses on food commodities were revoked in early 2022, but it was still permitted to be used in non-food situations such as pest control. In Europe, it was withdrawn from use in 2020. In Canada, some uses were cancelled in 2020, and the remaining uses were cancelled in 2021, with the phase-out period ending in December this year. In fact, I just heard that the MRLs are disappearing, the maximum residue limits are disappearing across internationally, and so that will make it hard for trade. If you're using it in citrus or in a commodity that's traded internationally, then you won't be able to use it because of monitoring, and so that often makes it so that chemical companies just won't manufacture it anymore on an international level because it won't be worth their while. So the next steps in the review, even though they have announced their proposed decision, it doesn't mean that you can't use chlorpyrifos this week. They are now open to public consultation period, which opened this week until the 11th of March. So during that time, anybody can put in public submissions, and ABGC will be coordinating a public submission, and I would be hopeful of working with all of you on this to try and get information so that we can provide a picture of what the impact of the cancellation of chlorpyrifos will mean for our industry, to see if we can get any uses changed or any of those proposed decisions. Then, after the submissions close, the APVMA will consider the public submissions for at least 3 to 4 months. And then in July, that's when they forecast that they will publish their final regulatory decision. And if they still decide that they will cancel all food uses on food crops, etc., then we would expect that they would, I've heard via various, my intel is that we would expect a phase-out period of at least 12 months. So if they decide to cancel Chlorpyrifos forever, every different type of it, then we would still be able to use it, provided we can obtain it until July 2025. So now what has industry been doing about all this? Well, we have been working on this. ABGC last year put a lot of pressure on Hort Innovation, who look after our chemicals, and to try and get a new active into chemical trials. And we did succeed. And one new active was taken into trials, but unfortunately, the efficacy trials didn't show that it met the standards of efficacy that were required. So the trials on that product were abandoned. However, luckily, another company has got another active that has immediately been taken into trials, and that product is in trials at the moment and is showing a lot more promise. And it's a completely different chemical grouping, so it will be a lot better for resistance management. But the thing is that it's still got to undergo the full set of chemical of efficacy trials and residue trials. So we wouldn't expect it to be on the market until 2026 at the very earliest. ABGC will also coordinate the submission to the APVMA that the withdrawal of Chlorpyrifos would have on the industry. There's also new R&D on methods to control bunch pests through the new IPM project that Kathy Grice is leading and that DAF is delivering. And you can find out more information on that through Kathy, looking at softer options and biologicals. Also, trial work has been conducted through the National Extension Project led by Tegan to help effectively manage bunch pests with the currently registered chemistries. Also, ever since 2019, we've been putting out information to growers and stakeholders through our comms and extension projects, including the frequently asked questions that are available on our website and have been published in our latest edition of the Australian Bananas magazine. So if you do want more information on the review, you can go to the review website on the APVMA. If you want more information on the review or the submission, you can also contact me. If you want to find out more on the work that the extension project's been working on with the different options, you can contact Tegan. If you would like to find out more about the progress in the IPDM project, please contact Kathy Grice. And if you want to find out more about what Hort Innovation is doing through the chemical trials, and they are well aware of the huge gap that has been left by the withdrawal, that would be left by the withdrawal of Chlorpyrifos. I've had numerous meetings with Hort Innovation Crop Protection Group over the last couple of months, as well as previously, and they are quite on board about that to see what can be done through the AgVet Forum grants. So now I'd like to open the floor to question and answers. Thank you.
So just a reminder, feel free to pop your hand up or put a question in the chat. Catherine, do we have any questions that have come through on the chat yet?
Not that I can see yet.
Or if that's not working for you, feel free to shout out.
Just unmute yourselves.
Yes.
I know it's not great news, people, in terms of losing that product. But I do really hope that the new product that we've got in trials, which has been shown to be very efficacious, especially against thrips in other crops, will provide us with some another product to rotate through for bunch pest. It's a bunch application. It's being trialled for bell injection and bunch spray. So that at least would provide a third product. But in my conversations with Hort Innovation, they also acknowledge that that is not enough. So Hort Innovation are currently preparing applications for another round of AgVet Forum grants at the moment, and I know that they will be looking at a other products for thrips control, and they work with the chemical companies. So the other thing that I am going to take to them is, and I would love to hear feedback from any growers online, is would it be beneficial to contact the manufacturers of the Chlorpyrifos impregnated bags? Would anyone use them? Does anyone online want to comment on that? If we could get them back into manufacturing, would anyone like to comment on that?
Yeah, Paul here. I personally have not used them in great amounts because they don't seem to work with our system at the moment. Given the amount of wind we have, they're very fragile. So the impregnated bags aren't. Yeah, I don't. I'd have to do a little bit more mucking around with those to see if they would go the distance, maybe as an inner. Yeah, I'm not sure. But my other question, Rosie, was going to be around this. We've had two actives, one drop, two new actives. One's been knocked on the head due to efficacy. This other one, hopefully, gonna do a job. What's the timeline on the trial results on that one in terms of we've got until July 25. How do you think that timeline looks?
I think they have to do it across 2 seasons, and it's already in trials for this season. Now, I know they have to do the full suite of trials, I think is 8 trials, but I don't know whether whether that's 4 efficacy trials and 4 residue trials. Stuart might be able to comment on that better than me. Also, we had the situation with success where they were able to get enough data to get a minor use permit for it before it actually got on label. So I asked Hort Innovation if this product was promising, whether the chemical company could be induced to put it on a minor use permit while it's going through the registration process. Catherine?
Yes, I've just got a comment in the chat here from John Blatzis just to say back on the impregnated bags that they're not interested as they're responsible for disposal of them. I believe you're referring to the growers, John.
That's a
Thanks
good
for that
point.
comment.
That's a good point, John, because I have looked at APVMA have proposed a label, and because Chlorpyrifos has been demonstrated to be so toxic in the environment, there's quite stringent disposal outlined on the label for the use of those bags. Like you cannot, obviously burn them, or you cannot put them in a landfill situation because of them leaching the products into the environment. So it's got to be like taken to a toxic waste dump, and it's got to be this and it's got to be that. So that is a real issue too.
It's just clarified too, Rosie, sorry, that the FMC, the importer, responsible for disposal.
Okay.
Yeah.
But is that the bifenthrin impregnated bags or the Chlorpyrifos impregnated bags?
John, feel free to reply in the comment. There we go, the bifenthrin.
I couldn't find a supplier or anybody who, even though they're registered in Australia, these Chlorpyrifos impregnated bags, I couldn't find where you could possibly buy them from. Anyway, it looks like the disposal. That might be a good thing. Okay, we sold the last lot in 2020. All right. And where did you get them from, John? FMC. Okay.
Stuart's typing just now.
Can people unmute themselves, Catherine?
Yeah, it's Stuart.
Might be easier. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it's going to be quicker than if I type. I can tell you. Yeah, going back to the Chlorpyrifos impregnated bags, guys, they were very commonly used in international export plantations in Africa, Asia, and Central America. But what you'll find, and that was where most of the manufacturing was done. I know that there was some imported into Australia by producers even back into the 90s. But because of the withdrawal from Chlorpyrifos in those markets and subsequently withdrawal of the MRLs, I know that, in Central America, for instance, they have in the last few years had to wholesale move from use of those bags because they can't have with MRLs of Chlorpyrifos going into Europe anymore, or Canada. And so I don't know that anyone's manufacturing them anymore. And I would imagine nobody's going to manufacture the market as new as Australia.
Yeah, like I'm thinking that we can put in the submission and make a case for all the work rates and all of those sorts of things, because I believe that when I go through, I've got people from Hort Innovation are going through the technical report at the moment and going through it for each of the industries that are badly affected by the outcomes of the review, and we can go back and make a case for it when we put in our submission. But I just don't know how likely it is, because the international climate, that we'll still put in a submission and say all the things, but I just don't want to raise people's hopes that it will change the situation because of what's happening on an international level. And that if chemical companies decide, because of the loss of MRLs and because of the international trade, they may not decide to continue manufacturing Chlorpyrifos. The market in Australia might be too small. So we'll do what we can, but I don't want to raise people's hopes that this product, we'll put in a submission and turn the whole thing around and we'll be back to bunch dusting.
Okay, Rosie, can you see people's hands going up, or do I need to guide you?
Oh, yeah. I can see Stuart's, but I just can't see everyone.
Yep, Stuart's has gone up.
Yeah, Rosie, I guess it's a question about the new chemistry work that's being done. Even if the efficacy and the environmental toxicology and everything else works out in their favour, it still remains the province of the company to decide whether it's worth economically them registering in bananas or not. Do we have a strategy for any way that we might assist them? If the company gets to the point that says, look, it's actually potentially a really good product, it's a whole new chemistry, but we're just not going to sell enough of it to make it worth our while. Does the industry have a plan B for that scenario?
Well, we have talked about this as at the board level, that if it was promising, is there a way that we could incentivize the company by helping, subsidize the registration costs? And I think that is a good point that you make, that yes, they will run through all their efficacy trials. As you say, if it is efficacious and if the residues are right, and then they make their decision, it would be worthwhile us getting into contact with the chemical company and saying, we really need this, it's shown to be really useful, we need it in our industry, now what can we do to help you to register, get bananas on label? I do think it'll be worthwhile doing that, and we will look at that. Yes. I think our board was supportive, weren't they, Paul and Leanne?
Absolutely. You've summed that up really well,
Yeah, I remember
Rosie.
that being the case. But also, you wouldn't not keep asking the question of Hort Innovation to come and help the banana industry on this one as well, in terms of you know, providing any support that they can do. We're a very big levy provider there, so there needs to be a bit of wiggle room with those guys as well, I feel.
Well, what I have done is I have gone back to some of those guys who know all about all the different chemicals, the new chemistries that are coming on board, to ask them what new chemistries. I think that's what we need to do. We do need to go to the chemical companies and say what, because, you know, they are developing, they're doing their own research on new chemistries. And so we need to highlight to them, okay, because Jim and I did go around a few years ago as well and talk to all the chemical companies. We had meetings with all of them and told them then, hey, we've got a gap on thrips. And, you know, we need this to be done in yellow sigatoga. We need this, that, and the other. And yeah, they took it all on board. So, I mean, we have got a few new products that have been brought to market after we had those meetings with them. So, you know, perhaps it's a case of now that Leanne's come on board, she and I go around and have meetings with all of the chemical companies, you know, in the first 6 months of this year, to just raise the issue of what all the gaps are again in our industry. Otherwise, you know, other citrus might be in there, or grapes or someone.
I think that's a really good suggestion, Rosie. There's a lot of value to having those meetings where possible face to face to make that case.
So just flagging, we've got 3
good.
minutes left. Were you going to say something, Paul?
No, sorry.
Just saying.
That sounds really good to go in and get face to face with these guys if that hasn't, you know, I'm sure it's been done before, but just as another reminder to get everything front of mind and yeah, still really, yeah. I mean, the clock has now been set. We know what the time frame is. Now we've got to go like hell to get another product, you know, another tool in the toolbox for everybody.
And Kathy has just raised that we are doing our review, agrochemical review at the moment. And Stuart and Tegan and I have raised some issues that about what the priorities are in our industry. We do that with Hort Innovation. They recently sent out a survey, but we didn't really feel, some growers did try and do the survey, but we didn't really think that it provided a good, very valuable information that really informs that, because that review highlights all the priority pests and the gaps and what chemistries there are that are for each pest. So Tegan and I were thinking of running a workshop in January, because Hort Innovation have put us on a very tight time frame because they've had a bit of staff churn and they get a consultant in to do it, and we only found out about it through a sort of small line at the bottom of one of their emails. So whether we can pull that off in the time frame, we will do our best, but it would be great to get some people who are interested in this sort of thing to come and help us if and when we do run this workshop in January, because it's really important, because they use that document for 5 years. So that's what we need to do. Anything else? Anyway, look, we'll keep you informed. I really will. And I'll be coming around and asking people for information to help me put in this submission. I can't do it without you. So, yeah, appreciate any information you can give me.
Thanks, Rosie. You're happy to hand over to me to wrap things up?
Yes, thanks, Leanne.
Great, thank you. So thank you everybody for joining. We do have a survey. We'd love to get some feedback on this webinar. ABGC's next webinar, will be offering one in the new year. That's going to be to members only, and it's going to be about value adding opportunities on banana fruit waste. So if you'd like to check your membership status to make sure you receive exclusive member benefits next year, if you could please reach out to Catherine, contact Catherine, and she can keep you updated. I'd like to close today by thanking Rosie and Catherine for today's webinar, and I'd like to wrap up by wishing everyone a very Merry Christmas. Thank you very much.